So, picture this. It's September 10th, 2025. Something completely wild happens on Wall Street. Something that just defies belief. A tech company, one that most of us honestly never use, sees its stock just absolutely explode. We're talking one of the biggest single-day gains in financial history. And in the process, its founder makes a truly mind-bending amount of money. $100 billion in a single day. Yep. That's how much founder Larry Ellison's net worth shot up when Oracle's stock went from $241 to $328 a share. And for a few hours, just a few hours, that surge actually made him the richest person on the entire planet, even richer than Elon Musk. And right there, that's the big mystery, isn't it? I mean, you and I, we know what Google does. We know what Amazon does. But Oracle? For most people, it's just this invisible giant humming away in the background. So how on earth did this old-school tech company suddenly become the most important player in the entire AI revolution? Well, the answer really boils down to the philosophy of its founder, Larry Ellison. His entire career has basically been a masterclass in making contrarian bets. Looking at where the crowd is going and then deliberately, strategically walking in the exact opposite direction. That $100 billion day wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just luck. It was the payoff for a series of 4 massive bets made over 50 years, and each one built on the one before it. So to really understand the genius of that final bet, the one that totally changed AI, we've got to go back and understand the first 3. Okay, so let's rewind. Way back to the 1970s. Companies are starting to use computers. But here's the problem. They weren't organizing their data. They were basically just making thousands of digital copies of the same chaotic mess they had on paper. Just imagine trying to run a company where the customer list in sales is different from the one in finance, which is also different from the one in the shipping department. It was total chaos. Then, a young programmer named Larry Ellison stumbles upon this obscure research paper from IBM describing something called a relational database. The idea was simple but revolutionary. A single central master table for all your information. If a customer's address changes, you update it once, just once, and it's instantly correct for everyone. Now, the crazy part is, IBM never did anything with this idea. They just left it on the shelf. Ellison saw his chance. But how does a tiny little startup compete? Well, with some serious audacity. First, they named their very first product Oracle version 2, because they knew nobody would buy a version 1 of anything. And it worked. The CIA became their first customer. Second, instead of building their own computers, they made their software work on everybody's computers. Smart, right? And third, they went after the big fish, governments, big banks, clients who, once they were pretty much in for life. So by the 80s, Oracle was king of the database world. But then the PC comes along and creates a brand new version of that old problem. Now, every single branch office has its own server, trapping data in what Ellison famously called islands of information. And the whole industry, everyone, was leaning into this decentralized model. So, what does Ellison do? Of course, he goes the other way. He proposed something that sounded absolutely insane at the time. Get rid of all those local servers and run the entire company on one single, massive, centralized database. The experts just laughed. They said the networks were way too slow, that it was technically impossible. So to prove them all wrong, Ellison used his own company as a lab rat. He took Oracle's 70 different internal databases and merged them all into one. The result? It wasn't just a proof of concept. It was a revolution. Oracle started saving $1 billion a year. That number, that billion-dollar number, it changed everything. And pretty soon, every Fortune 500 company was lining up to do the same thing. But you know how it is in tech. Just when you think you're on top of the world, a new force comes along and changes everything. That force was the internet. And it brought with it 2 massive threats that could have completely wiped Oracle off the map. So what were these threats? Okay, first, you had these free open source databases like MySQL, and they were getting super popular with all the new internet startups, eating away at Oracle's core business. Second, Oracle was only one piece of the puzzle. If the big software companies, the ones making the stuff people actually used, decided to use a different database, Oracle's business could have just vanished. Ellison's third bet was this brutally effective counterattack. To deal with the open source threat, he just bought the biggest one, MySQL. Simple as that. But instead of killing it, he used it as an entry point to sell customers on his bigger, better products. And to solve the second threat, he went on an absolutely legendary shopping spree, spending $50 billion to buy over 100 of the biggest software companies out there. The lesson? if people can beat you at your own layer, just buy all the layers on top of you. So by the 2000s, Oracle seemed invincible. It owned the entire stack. But then came the next huge shift in technology, cloud computing. And this time it really looked like Larry Ellison had made a catastrophic, company-ending mistake. Think about it. While Amazon, Microsoft, and Google were pouring billions upon billions into building the future of computing, Larry Ellison was literally on stage, in public, mocking the entire idea of the cloud. It just seemed like the ultimate act of arrogance from a leader who had finally lost his touch. And for more than a decade, the market proved him wrong. I mean, just look at that chart. By 2024, Oracle's cloud business was that tiny little 2% sliver. It was a rounding error. Amazon, Microsoft, and Google had won. The story really seemed like it was over. But what nobody, and I mean nobody, understood was Ellison's fourth, final, and most contrarian bet of all. And that brings us to the final act. Because here's the thing. History has this funny way of turning what looks like a fatal mistake into a masterstroke. The AI boom didn't just give Oracle a second chance. It turned their biggest weakness into their most powerful, untouchable strength. Okay, to understand how this happened, we have to get just a little bit technical, but stick with me. It's actually pretty cool. Think of it like this. The cloud that Amazon and Google built is like renting an apartment in a giant skyscraper. It's efficient, but you're sharing the plumbing, the electricity, everything. Oracle, being so late to the game, built their cloud differently. They bet on something called bare metal, which is like giving every single customer their own private house. All the power, all the resources are yours and yours alone. Now, for years, this private house approach seemed inefficient and super expensive. Why would you want that? But then generative AI came along. And it turns out training a huge AI model like GPT-4 is like trying to build a rocket ship inside your tiny apartment. You keep blowing the fuses, you're fighting with your neighbors for power. It just doesn't work. You need your own workshop, your own private power grid. You need that private house. And just like that, Ellison's wrong bet was suddenly the only architecture on the planet built to handle the insane demands of the AI revolution. The result was a gold rush, a stampede. Suddenly, every serious player in AI, including Oracle's biggest rivals, started flocking to their cloud. OpenAI signed a mind-boggling $300 billion deal. Elon Musk's xAI partnered up to train their models. And here's the ultimate validation. Even Google, Google, with its own massive cloud, started using Oracle's infrastructure to run some of its AI models. This was the seismic shift that sent Oracle's stock to the moon. So what do we make of all this? Was Larry Ellison some kind of visionary who saw the future of AI a decade before anyone else? Or was he just incredibly lucky that a strange, contrarian bet he made years ago just happened to be the perfect solution for a technology that nobody could have possibly predicted? You know, in the end, maybe the answer doesn't even matter. From taking a chance on a forgotten IBM paper all the way to building the one cloud that could power the future, Larry Ellison has consistently followed his own advice. He made his fortune by refusing time and time again to do what everyone else was doing. And that philosophy is exactly what led to one of the most incredible paydays in the history of technology.